All right, today I already uploaded. I worked out all of the answers and everything, uploaded the whole thing, put it in the review so you guys can see it. I'm going to go over the exact kinds of problems that you're going to have in your test. You are allowed to use a calculator tomorrow, all right? If you don't have one tomorrow with you, the numbers are going to get big, but I mean, it's doable, but it would just make things a lot easier if you had a calculator to work with. Up here at the top, all right, when you are solving any equations that says solve using Kramer's, you're going to have one 2x2 and one 3x3. Make sure, guys, that your equations, the x's are first, the y's are second, the z's are third, there's an equal sign, and then the number, all right? Make sure that it goes x, y, z equals number. If it doesn't, get it in that order. You can algebraically move things around. If it's on the same side of the equation, you just move it, you know, and if it's from one side to the other of the equal sign, then you change the sign. But it needs to go x, y, z equals number. If there is not a letter present, what do you put? A 0, okay? So just make sure everything's in order. And for Pascal's, you need to know if a binomial is raised to the third power, to the fourth power, or to the fifth power. Those are the rows you need to know. Okay, so you need to know the 1, 3, 3, 1, 1, 4, 6, 4, 1, 1, 5, 10, 10, 5, 1. Right, everybody got that? We're going to go over examples of each kinds of this. So look at number 1. Kramer's rule for a 2x2. Again, make sure that you have everything in order. Are my x's first, my y's second, then an equal sign, then the number? Yes? All right, so there's 3 things we need to find. We first need to find the determinant. Just the determinant. So we put what, where? A lot of you made mistakes on this because they weren't in order. What goes where? What goes in the first column? 3 and -5. Good. What goes in the second column? 4 and 2. Now, there is no excuse tomorrow, guys, that you get this question wrong because you don't do the signs correctly. A lot of you didn't distribute a negative or you got messed up with negatives, and that's where you made a mistake on your quiz. So just make sure you have a calculator, use it. It is going to be 3 times 2 minus what? 4 times -5. All right. Put that in your calculator if you need to so you don't make a silly mistake. But 3 times 2 is 6. What's -4 times -5?
20.
So what is your determinant here? 26. Your determinant is 26. So now we have to find d sub x. How do we do that? What goes in the x column? The answers. Good. So this is 1 and 3. And then what's your y's? 4 and 2. Again, it's going to be top left times bottom right. So 1 times 2 minus 3 times 4. What is 1 times 2? 2. What's -3 times 4? Minus 12. So 2 minus 12 is what? -10. Okay, so your d sub x is -10. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to find my d sub y. How do I find my d sub y? What goes in the x column? The x's, so 3 and -5. What goes in the y column? The answers, 1 and 3. So this is going to be 3 times 3 minus 1 times -5. What's 3 times 3? 9. I have -1 and -5 is what? Guys, 9 minus 1 times -5 is what?
9 plus.
It's plus 5. So this is 14. So your d sub y is 14. Now, how do you figure out what your ordered pair is? How do you figure out what your ordered pair is? You're going to divide your d sub x by the determinant and your d sub y by the determinant. So 26, 26. Guys, don't answer this as some crazy decimal. Yes, you have a calculator, but don't give me whatever -10 divided by 26 is as a decimal. Just simplify the fraction. What's -10 over 26 simplify to? -5 over 13, okay. And then what is 14 over 26 simplify to? 7 over 13. There you go. But do not give me crazy decimals. If it comes out to a pretty decimal like 1.25 or, 1 0.5 or something like that, fine, if it terminates, but nothing that's a repeating decimal or irrational. Questions on 2 by 2? All right, let's work on this 3 by 3. This one's a long one, all right? I was working it out last night and made so many silly mistakes just because I wasn't paying attention, so I redid it this morning. But you have a calculator. So how many determinants do we have to find with this equation?
3.
Got to find 4. You have to find the determinant itself of just your coefficients. So when I find my determinant of my coefficients, the first thing I write down are the coefficients of the x's. What's the coefficient of the x in the first equation? -6. What is the coefficient of x in the second equation, guys? 0. What is the coefficient of x in the third equation? 4. Does everybody see that? Yes or no? Okay. So then, what are my y's? -1, what? 0 and -24. Okay. And then what are my z's? 1, 4, and 24. Good. Now, how do you find the determinant with a 3 by 3? What do you have to do? Recopy the first 2 columns. So -6, 0, 4, -1, 0, -24. Now, you are welcome to use my color pencils. I told you guys that before. And you have a calculator, so don't tell me this is too much work. Your first are your majors. So top left, bottom right, top left, bottom right, top left, bottom right. You're going to multiply each one together, and then we're going to add. So what's -6 times 0 times -24? 0. What's -1 times 4 times 4? -16. And then what's 1 times 0 times -24? Perfect. So I have minus, and then now you have your minors. So it's here, here, and here. Again, you guys have a calculator. Use it. What is 4 times 0 times 1? 0. What's -24 times 4 times -6? 576. And then 24 times 0 times -1. Okay. So this ends up being -16 minus 576. What is that? -592. Okay, that's your determinant. That's what you're going to divide everything by. Yes, it's a bigger number, but don't worry about it. You guys have a calculator. So now we're going to take and find our d sub x. So what do I put in the column where I would usually put my x's? The answer. So it's -7, -6, 17. This isn't hard. It's just a pain. So now for my y's. What do I put for my y's? -1, 0, -24, and then my z's. 1, 4, 24. Recopy the first 2 columns. So -6, -7, 17, -1, 0, -24. Again, if you get a fraction as an answer, that's okay. But if you get something crazy, then you've got to go back and say, I must have done something wrong. Some of you did not do that on your quiz. You just were like, oh, this random awful number must be right. All right, top left, bottom right. Multiply and add. So I'm going to say, what's -7 times 0 times 24? 0. What's -1 times 4 times 17? -68. Perfect. And then what's 1 times -6 times -24? Yep, 144. Good. Minus. Now I'll go the other way. What is 17 times 0 times 1? 0. What is -24 times 4 times -7? Negative times negative is a positive, so 672. Good. And then what is 24 times -6 times -1? Yep. All right, so in this first parenthesis, what's -68 plus 144? 76. Minus, what's 672, sorry, plus 144? 816. And then subtract those, what do you get? -740. Now, before I go on to the next one, because these numbers are quite large, I'm going to go ahead and see if I think I'm on the right track. I'm going to find x. So I'm going to take my negative 740 and I'm going to divide it by negative 592. What do you get when you do that? What's negative 740 divided by negative 592? 1.25. Does that sound like a reasonable answer? If I were to write that as a fraction, it would be 5 over 4. So probably, guys, you're on the right track with that one. If you got like negative 39 over 124, probably not. Okay, so just kind of keep track of yourself. So let's go to the next one. Let's find d sub y. All right, again, we're going to go through the whole process. What do I do? My x column. If I'm finding d sub y, what do I write in the x column? The x's. So negative 6, 0, and 4, right?
I'm leaving early.
Okay, so the y, we're going to write the answers. Negative 7, negative 6, 17. And then for my z's, what do I write? 1, 4, 24. So then we're going to recopy the first two columns. So negative 6, 0, 4. Negative 7, negative 6, 17. So we're going to find our major minus the minor. Top left, bottom right. So top left to bottom right. What's negative 6 times negative 6 times 24? You got a calculator. Come on. 864. Okay. Then we have negative 7 times 4 times 4. Yes. And then 1 times 0 times 17. Perfect. Now the other way. What's 4 times negative 6 times 1? Negative 24. Perfect. What's 17 times 4 times negative 6? Negative 408. Good. And then what's 24 times 0 times negative 7? 0. Good. So, first parenthesis, 864 minus 112. 752, perfect. Minus, what's negative 24 minus 408? Negative 432. Guys, when you have two negatives together, what does that make? A positive. So what's 752 plus 432? 1184. All right, well, let's see if we're on the right track, just to make sure. What was my determinant from the very beginning? Negative 592. So let's divide this by negative 592. What is 1184 divided by negative 592? Oh, just negative 2? Yeah. All right, so you think that one's probably right as well? Okay, good. So our ordered pair is going to be 5/4, negative 2, and then we're going to find the last part. Again, this is a pain in the butt. I understand that. But use a whole sheet of paper. You only have one of these 3x3. Use a whole sheet of paper. Take your time. Write everything nice and neat. Let's find our d sub z. So for d sub z, what goes in my x column? Negative 6, what? 0, 4. What goes in my y's? Negative 1, 0, negative 24. And then my answers go in z, so negative 7, negative 6, and 17. Rewrite the first two columns, negative 6, 0, 4, negative 1, 0, negative 24. Top left to bottom right. So boom, boom, boom. What's negative 6 times 0 times 17? Oh, 0. What's negative 1 times negative 6 times 4? Yep. And then what's negative 7 times 0 times negative 24? Perfect. Minus. Now we go the other way. Boom, boom, boom. What's 4 times 0 times negative 7? 0. What's negative 24 times negative 6 times negative 6? Perfect. And then what's 17 times 0 times negative 1? Good. So you end up having here 24 minus a negative is going to be what? Good. So when you add those two numbers together, what do you get? 888. All right, divide that by your determinant, which was negative 592. What's 888 divided by negative 592? Negative 1.5, so negative 3 over 2. Does that make sense? Yes. All right. Some of you on your quiz got these wacko, ridiculous fractions, and nothing said to you like, hey, it's probably not the right way. There are no crazy fractions on any of the versions of your test tomorrow for Kramer's rule. None. You might get a crazy fraction, when I say crazy fraction, like 7 over 11 or something for one of the partial fractions, but not for Kramer's. So just make sure you guys are on top of that. Questions? Again, I understand it's a pain because it's really long, but it's not terribly difficult. All right. I understand that says fin. So it's like, you wrote fin. Okay, what do you think I meant? Find. Okay. So find the partial fraction decomposition and solve. So we got to go through the whole thing. So first we got to set it up, then we got to figure out what we're going to use to evaluate, then we have to write our answer. So how do we figure out what to evaluate? We have to do what? Factor. Many of you either didn't divide by the A term, or the number was too big, so just decided, I'm just not going to factor it. Guys, you have to be able to factor. We're in pre-calc honors. Some of us are graduating high school. We have to be able to factor where A is not 1. All right, there was a couple of them that were a little tricky, but nothing terrible. So what are my factors of negative 6 that are going to multiply to give me a negative 6, but add to give me a positive 1? Okay, so x minus 3, x plus 2. Some of you left your fraction or your factors like this. Are those correct? No, x times x is not going to give me 2x squared. You have to divide by the A term. If you're going to forget to do that, you already know you're going to forget, then do the grouping method.
Is it not x plus 3 and x minus 2?
I just listened to whatever you guys said. So plus and minus here? Like that? There we go. Okay, perfect. Let's divide by our A term. So my two factors are going to be 2x plus 3 and what else? X minus 1, all right? So I'm going to go ahead up here and I'm going to say my A, I'm just going to make 2x plus 3 plus my B is going to be over x minus 1, all right? You can go ahead and tell yourself what you're going to evaluate with. What are the two values that you're going to plug in for? You're going to plug in what? Perfect, negative 3 over 2, and then what? Positive 1, right? We're going to evaluate our equation using those two numbers in just a minute. Now, how do I make this equivalent? How do I make the left-hand side of the equation the same as the right? What do I have to multiply A by? X minus 1 and B by 2x plus 3. Good. Now, this just becomes an Algebra 1 problem. Yes, you have a calculator, but again, we don't want crazy decimals. So I'm going to rewrite this so it's nice and easy to see. 3x plus 4 equals A times x minus 1 plus B times 2x plus 3. Now, when I evaluate, guys, each time when I plug in a number for x, what should happen to one of my variables? One of them should cancel. All right, so it doesn't matter which one you do first. I'm going to do here x equals 1, and here I'll do x equals negative 3 over 2. So 3 times 1 plus 4 equals A times 1 minus 1 plus B times 2 times 1 plus 3. What's 3 times 1? 3, and 3 plus 4 is, okay, equals. What happens when I have 1 minus 1? 0. So what's going to happen with A? It's going to cancel. Good. And then on the second, I have 2, right? 2 times 1 is 2, plus 3 is, so this becomes 5B. You guys agree? And then I divide both sides by what? Okay. So my B value is 7 over 5. Does anybody have any questions about how I just arrived at that? All right. All right, I'm going to do the same thing over here, but now I'm going to evaluate the equation with what number? Negative 3 over 2. Okay, so I have 3 over 1 times negative 3 over 2 plus 4 equals A times negative 3 over 2 minus 1 plus b times 2 over 1 times negative 3 over 2 plus 3. So let's evaluate. What's 3 times negative 3 over 2? Negative 9 over 2. You guys agree? All right, so if I'm going to add 4 to that, I got to get a common denominator. What's my common denominator between 1 and 2? 2. If I multiply the bottom by 2, I multiply the top. So 4 times 2 is 8. So this on the left-hand side of my equation becomes negative what? Negative 1. Negative 1/2?
Yeah.
Okay. So now over here, if I get a common denominator here, guys, do you agree that this is 2 over 2? Yes? All right, so this becomes a, and then in my parenthesis, it's negative 5 over 2. You guys agree? And then what happens over here with b? It cancels, right? Because these 2's would cancel, then you have negative 3 plus 3, it's just going to give me 0. So how do I now get a by itself here? Multiply both sides by negative 2 over 5. Or you divide by negative 5 over 2. Then you'll keep change flips. I'm going to multiply here by negative 2 over 5. Then I multiply here by negative 2 over 5. So my a value is how much? 1 over 5. Now, guys, some of you lost points because you wrote your answers incorrectly. I have fractions. You don't write a fraction in a numerator. When you would write your answer here, what would my answer be? What is my a? 1/5. So I'm going to write 1 over 5, and then my denominator is 2x plus 3. Plus my b. My b is 7 over 5, and then what's the denominator? X minus 1. And there is your answer. You do not have fractions in the numerator and then a denominator. Whatever they put the numerator on top, and the denominator just sticks in the bottom. Questions about that? Uh-huh. Yeah, like if your a, like you wouldn't write it as 7 over 5 over x minus 1. You put the numerator, the denominator goes here. You got to put it down in there. All right, let's do a couple passes and we'll be done. I'm doing all of these for a specific reason, so make sure we know. All right, this, as easy as I'm showing you guys, is exactly how you should do it. You should not make your life any harder. First thing you're going to do is identify the row. What row are we raising this one to? What power? Fourth power. So what are the numbers that are going to go at the very top for the fourth power? 1, 4, 6, 4, 1. Okay, perfect. So now we write our first term, correct? What is our first term? X, 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 and X. What's my second term? Negative 3. I'm going to put a negative 3 in parentheses because I know when I square and stuff like that, it changes the sign. So you just write your second term however many times you need to. How do I write my exponents on my first term? You're going to go start at 4 and go down to 0. So this becomes 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Anything to the 0 power is 1. How do I write my exponents on my second term? From 0, opposite direction. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. At this point, guys, I personally would go through and make my multiplication and stuff a little easier on myself. I'm going to go ahead and distribute the exponents. What is negative 3 to the first power? Negative 3, right? What is negative 3 squared? 9. What's negative 3 cubed? Negative 27. And what's negative 3 to the fourth power? Positive 81. You guys have a calculator. There's no reason you don't do that. Now this just makes things easy. We're going to multiply down. If I multiply down, what's 1 times x to the fourth? X to the fourth, right? So the next one, 4 times negative 3 is? What's 4 times negative 3? Negative 12. And I have x cubed. So 6 times 9 is 54. And then what's the variable? X squared. Then I have 4 times negative 27, which is negative 108. Good. X. And then what's 81 times 1 times 1? Plus 81. Having a calculator, you guys have no excuse for getting those wrong. All right, if we asked you to do this without a calculator, it'd be annoying. I know that. I mean, I know it's annoying already, but like it should be able to be simplified very quickly. Same thing with here. We've got to remember our exponent rules. Some of us had questions on this when we were doing our homework. You can change this one to the third. You guys get the idea. We'll do that in a second. But 5th row, okay? This is going to be a long one. This is going to be a big one. That's okay. But the 5th row, what are the numbers at the top for the 5th row? 1, 5, 10, and then what? 10, 5, 1, okay? It's pretty easy. So again, we're going to go through the same process. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to write my first term, correct? So I'm going to write 3x, and I'm putting 3x in parentheses. It's probably a really good idea for you guys to do that, and you'll see why in a second. But I just write my 3x, 14 times or whatever. What's my second term? Positive 4, okay. If you want to put it in a parenthesis, go ahead. But since it's positive, you don't really have to, but it might be helpful to get in the habit. And now we can simplify here in a second. Let's go ahead and do our exponents. What's the highest row we're talking about? What are we raising our to 5? So I'm going to start here, and this is going to go what direction? Start with what number? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Anything raised to 0 power is 1. My second row, we start with what number? 0, and I go up. 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now that we have everything set up, guys, this crosses off over here and becomes a 1. Does anybody have any questions about the setup? Okay, we understand the setup. Now we have to go back to Algebra 1 and remember our exponent rules. I'm going to go ahead and distribute. Before I multiply down, I'm going to go ahead and distribute my exponents. Where does this 5 go to? It goes to the 3 and to the x. So 3 to the 5th power is what number? 243 x to the 5th. And then I would cross that out. So then next, this 4. This 4 is going to go to the 3 and where? To the x. So what's 3 to the 4th power? 81 x to the 4th. And then cross that out. So then my 3 is going to go to the 3 and to the x. What's 3 cubed? 27, and then this is x cubed. Then my 2 goes here and here, so this is 9x squared. And then I just have 3x to the 1st power. Does everybody understand what I just did there? That will probably help you not make a silly mistake. And then now you just multiply. Grab your calculator and multiply. What is 1 times 1 times 243? 243, and it's x to the 5th power, correct? Okay, so now I have plus 5 times 81 times 4. 1,620, x to the what? 4th, perfect. So now 10 times 27. Oh, I didn't do this down here, did I? Sorry. 4 squared is 16. What's 4 cubed? 64. What's 4 to the 4th power? 256. What's 4 to the 5th power? 1024, yep. Sorry, I forgot to do that part. So now when you multiply down, what's 10 times 27 times 16? 4,320 x to the 3rd, right? So now you have 10 times 9 times 64. Perfect. 5,760 x squared. Then you have 5 times 3 times 256. 3,840. X, good. And then plus 1,024. Again, the numbers get big, but you guys have a calculator. But just remember your exponent rules. You want to distribute exponents to numbers and to variables. And then make sure you multiply all the coefficients down. And again, remember, guys, I posted this. This is in the assignment, already worked out. Everything's there. So let's look at the last one. All right, I changed this one to the third row just because we've already done the fourth and fifth row. What's the third row? One, what? 1, 3, 3, 1. Okay, easy enough. What is the first term? 3x squared. Write that down under each one. 3x squared, 3x squared, 3x squared. All right. What is the second term? Negative 2y what? Negative 2y cubed, okay? Tried to put all sorts of little things on here that you might see, so nothing is a surprise. Again, I changed this problem from what it is in the review, I know, just to make the numbers a little smaller. We're raising to the third power, so on my first term, what exponent do I start with? 3, 2, 1, 0. Anything raised to 0 power is 1. All right, so my second term, I start with what? 0. So it's going to become a 1. And then 1, 2, 3. I would go ahead and distribute exponents first. This 3 goes to the coefficient and to the exponent. So what is 3 cubed? What's 3 times 3 times 3? 27. And when you raise a power to a power, what do you do to the exponents? You multiply. If you're multiplying same base, you add them. But when you raise a power to a power, what do I do with 3 and 2? You multiply. That becomes x to the 6th. So this 2 goes here and here. What is 3 squared? 9. And this becomes x to the 4th. Good. This is just 3x squared. Everybody understand? You with me? All right, let's do the next one then. Think about this. This 1 goes to everything, so this is just negative 2y cubed. This 2 goes to the negative 2 and to the y cubed. What's negative 2 squared? 4, and then it's y to the what? 6th. So this 3 goes here and here. What is negative 2 to the third power? Negative 8. Y to the what? Perfect. That's it. And now we just multiply down. So what's 1 times 27 times 1? So 27x to the 6th. What is 3 times 9 times negative 2? Negative what? 54, okay. And then what are the variables? X to the 4th, y to the 3rd, okay. So what's 3 times 3 times 4? So plus 36. What are my variables? X squared, y to the 6th, good. And then what's 1 times negative 8? So I have negative 8 and y to the what? To the 9th. Good. You've got to remember exponent rules, guys. You have to remember negatives times positives. You have to remember what happens when you square a negative, that sort of a thing. But use your calculator. That is what's going to be on your test. You're going to have 1 Kramer's 2 by 2, 1 Kramer's 3 by 3, 1 partial fraction where you got to set it up and solve it, and then probably 3 of the expandings. You're definitely going to have one like number 12 here that has, you know, like a coefficient and a variable with an exponent, that sort of a thing. But you have the whole class period. You can use your calculators. Just please be here. If you are not here tomorrow, plan on taking the makeup on Thursday. If you're not here tomorrow, plan on taking the makeup on Thursday. Does anybody have a test tomorrow? AP? No? Okay, perfect.